Hi everyone and welcome to your horoscope for the week of May 18th, 2020. We have a very active and extremely powerful sky where the power is mostly inwards right now because we start the week with 4 planets being retrograde in the sky, and this is where the celestial energy is rather focused on the individual rather than on the collective. This is where all of a sudden the individual is the star of the celestial show, and our individual decisions, whatever happens in our lives individually, is way more important. And that is the key, that is the basis right now of whatever happens collectively. Now, there is a very powerful energy that we inherit from last week, and we're talking about the hard aspect, the square, the compensation of tension between Venus retrograde in the sign of Gemini and Neptune in its home sign of Pisces. And as I said in the previous horoscopes, this is an energy of very profound emotional confusion. This is where there is a tendency for our hearts and minds to battle each other. This is where we might question everything and everyone that we love. This is where we even question our own interior motives of why we are attracted to certain things or people, why our priorities, especially the emotional priorities, are the way they are. How did we ever find this certain balance? But ultimately, even though this energy is very uncomfortable, because there is always an aura of doubt inside of us, may it be the mental sphere, may it be certain doubting thoughts invading our minds, or may it be the heart wishing or desiring something totally different than what we have in our lives in the present moment. So, this is where the heart and mind all together become very, very tricky, and understanding how we feel, why we feel certain things, why we are facing a constant state of emotional vulnerability, where very many times thoughts just take us back to the past, especially all the negativity of the past, where we might have been hurt, where our fears might have came to life. And this is due to Mars being in the sign of Pisces and advancing in this area of the sky, which is also a rather uncomfortable energy, because in this area of the sky, Mars is not as quick, not as forceful, not as motivated, not as ambitious, not as fiery as in its normal expression, because the watery energy of Pisces kind of drowns it, stops it, takes away its urgency, it takes away its fiery nature. So basically, our Mars right now, the symbol of our wills, the symbol of our focus and passion, is navigating within our emotional worlds, our subconscious, everything that has to do with the past, everything that has to do with repressed emotions. This, of course, this doesn't have to be negative. It can also be the energy of nostalgia, where we desire to relive very happy memories and very pleasant experiences from the past. But this can also be the energy where we recall our traumas. But since we are talking about Mars, this isn't just like a memory and just facing whatever we lived. This is also a very, very powerful, for some people even irresistible, inner invitation to face it and close it, to purge, to come to terms with everything that happened into the past. And later on in the month, when Mars is going to be meeting Neptune in a conjunction, well, maybe that is the moment when we find acceptance, when we find surrender, when we find forgiveness, when we can ground ourselves in a reality of our choosing. That is the moment when we can see very, very big conclusions. That is definitely going to be a moment when this energy, whatever we're feeling right now, including the confusion, including the, wishy-washy states, the dreamy states, maybe the suffering, the bad memories, the past haunting us, all of this, that is the moment when this will make perfect sense, and we are actually going to be rather grateful, rather appreciative that we went through this emotional confusion because it led us to clarity and inner strength. And ultimately, that is the most positive thing that we can accomplish for in the months to come. Towards the end of 2020, we're definitely going to need emotional clarity, emotional strength, knowing ourselves, being in tune with our feelings and also our thoughts, because towards the end of the year, I think massive decisions, life changing choices and options are going to be waiting all of us one way or another. For some people, it's definitely going to be karmic, while for others, it is their chance to evolve and step into the future. Now, at the very beginning of the week, this energy is going to be very, very strong and heavy. The square is going to perfect itself, is going to be extra strong. But towards the end of the week, Mercury is going to be meeting Venus in the sky, and that will change the tone differently, because Mercury, after all, is the ruling sign of Gemini. It is the power of our intellects, of our minds, our rationality, and this is the lower mind. So this is the part of our mental sphere where things make so much sense and where we can practically apply knowledge and everything, all the info that we possess. So that will be a moment when greater clarity is going to be reached, when communication is going to serve grounding and clarity. And at the same time, on the 22nd of the month, we also have a very powerful new moon taking place in this part of the sky, and that is also going to add greatly to the clarity and finding out whatever we need to find out within ourselves, mostly emotionally, spiritually, like subconscious purges, coming to terms with the past, closing the doors to the past, breaking certain relationships. Because this energy, we're talking about Venus retrograde, so it doesn't matter how we look at this, it is still going to terminate certain relationships, and at the same time, it is definitely going to heal other relationships. Maybe because Pisces is a very karmic energy, it has to do with the past, it has to do with even things which are remain unclosed, unfinished from the past. So this energy can definitely re-establish old relationships which have terminated for some reason or another. But people change throughout life. So if that person from your past has changed sufficiently in order for you to resonate once more, well, this energy can revive and resurrect that relationship. And this is where bridges are actually going to be rebuilt. But of course, it all depends on your personal situation, because there is so many different ways this energy can manifest itself. So definitely, if you're an established bond and you had problems in your relationship already before this Venus retrograde and before even Venus entered the sign of Gemini, well, then chances are this energy is going to be forcing both of you to, look at the situation realistically based on the actual, matters of the heart, where it's not because you share something with that partner or where they're very practical, very useful in in your lives. That won't matter as much. What will matter is the honesty of your feelings, and if those feelings are not very stable and grounded and are not based on real love, well, then chances are this energy invites you to terminate that relationship for the sake of honesty. While for other people, for example, who are single and looking and suffering because of loneliness, because of this Venus retrograde in Gemini, we're with Neptune, because this is a dual energy where you are feeling extremely lonely, where you would desire nothing more than to have affection and love in your life. But at the same time, there's that Neptune, which is also making you enjoy and protect your solidarity, your solitude, because you also enjoy time with yourself and the relation you have with yourself, with your soul, with your higher self. So this is where you also have to make certain decisions if you want to stay solo or if you actually want to do everything in your power to attract the new relationship. And for you guys, this Venus retrograde and the square with Neptune, and especially Mars being in the same sign as Neptune, this can also trigger fated relationship to enter into your lives if you decide that this is what you desire, if you decide that you're ready, and most importantly, if you have made the decision to close all doors to the past and just embrace your future. While for other people, it might not even have to do with any relationship or romance, it has to do with attachments, it has to do with desires, especially unhealthy obsessive desires, which need to be purged out. So this might have to do with love for a hobby, love for a job, love for an activity, or anything, where this confusion and this not knowing what actually you want and desire and not being in tune with what you actually love is a positive thing, because it is motivating you, almost forcing you to dig deep within you and come up with answers. And towards the end of the week, I am perfectly sure that those answers are starting to come and are starting to show up in your life. May it be something inner, like an inner epiphany, or may it have to do with communication with others, expressing your true feelings, being honest with each other, and the feedback you are going to receive is going to help you find clarity. And this energy is absolutely valid for everything that has to do with the collective, with the world stage, with collective reality, because we are also living an informational battleground where conspiracies and official information are battling each other, but chances are all of us are perceiving both sides of the spectrum as something false and fake, and we cannot trust anything that we hear, that we read, that we see from the internet. So this is where we also have to make the choices and find our inner truth to align with a version which resonates with us the most, because chances are outer reality is no longer a valid source of information in any shape or form, because everything, even official sources, are full of deception, are full of, guesses, where no one holds the ultimate truth, no one holds actual, trustable, authentic scientific data. So this is really a matter of what resonates and what doesn't. But of course, there's other energies in the sky which are completing this massive square between Venus and Neptune. For example, we begin the week where the Sun forms harmonious, supremely harmonious celestial conversations with Jupiter retrograde and Pluto from the sign of Capricorn. And this is also the truth, especially inner truth, where if we might have faced or are facing in the present moment challenges to our faith, to our certain doubts regarding our inner truth, or maybe if life or the energies around us are inviting us to ground ourselves in something stable, mostly in an inner truth, a version of events which resonates with us the most. This can be a little bit uncomfortable, but this is actually an expression of healthy faith, because whenever Jupiter goes retrograde, well, the first period of that retrograde is definitely going to be challenging for our faith, whatever we believe in, our inner truth, whatever we hold as real for us. This is also the period when we can take on a totally new perspective to everything that we believe. This is where we can upgrade our life view, our deepest principles and life philosophies, and upgrading those or modifying those ultimately upgrades, so to speak, our goals, our desires, and whatever we want to accomplish, especially when Jupiter is in the sign of Capricorn, which has much to do with the life path, our soul path, whatever we have to accomplish in this life. But it can also have the symbolism of career, of job, or the organization you belong to, whatever you want to accomplish professionally in your life. And since it speaks to the Sun being in the sign of Taurus, which has everything to do with our worth, our value systems, our possessions, whatever makes us valuable, Well, this can be a really positive and enlightening energy regarding our self-worth. This can actually manifest in rewards. This can also represent help being offered to us, for example, by a highly influential person or from someone with a very stable material background. But Jupiter in Capricorn can also represent centralized power, where it's a council, organization, a representative of the government or the state which offers help, solutions, or promises of help. The banks, for example, are perfectly included in here. Maybe the banks offer solutions to debt, solutions to your personal finances if you are facing certain obstacles in this area of life. But at the same time, it can represent beautiful karmic rewards. It can also represent brute power, inner power, that Pluto, even though the trine with Pluto is no longer very powerful, but still it is inner strength where you can accomplish what you need, and fate, outer reality, the karmic forces can conspire in your favor. But let's not forget that the sun ultimately can be seen as the ego as well, and in the middle of the week, before it exits the sign of Taurus, so around the 19th and 18th of the month, well, it is an energetic degree of Taurus, 29 degrees, and this represents that the shadow expression of the sun is greatly emphasized, and the shadow expression of the sun can be ego, it can be narcissistic tendencies, it can be a totally unrealistic, greatly amplified sense of self-worth, especially where that Jupiter can expand it to sky-high levels where you might not embody dignity, you might not embody modesty, you might not be in tune with reality. So this is the moment when be very careful, even when your life is filled with blessings, even when as a professional or in any other quality, you are receiving honors, you're receiving praises, people are supporting you and loving you. Well, don't let this get to you, to your head. Even a blessing if you take it in an excessive way, because Jupiter retrograde is also your inner Jupiter, so you can expend everything yourself. So the best way to navigate around this energy is always to keep a sense of realism, because yes, all the praises and honors, even positive manifestations, pure good luck, is a very wonderful energy, but that doesn't mean that you have to take it in a very self-centered way. Because yes, maybe the universe wants to make you the star of the show in this period, but that doesn't mean really anything, because this energy will fade away, and then you're left with the real sense of self-worth. So it's not really a good idea to delude ourselves into thinking that we are more valuable and more worthy than we actually are. But ultimately, this energy is that of blessings. It is the energy where we can accomplish very many things, where the universe conspires in our favor, where we can use our inner Pluto, the power to attract into our fate, from using the karmic forces basically, whatever we need, whatever we desire. But we also have to base everything on true inner truth, where it shouldn't be our obsessions, our unhealthy desires that motivate us, but rather focus on our most urgent needs. The power of that Pluto retrograde also gives us the opportunity to surrender, to give up, to eliminate from our lives, from our psyche, from our souls, everything that doesn't belong really there. All of those goals and dreams and expectations and desires that actually come from external reality, which are projections of other people onto us, where we try to meet the expectations of society or others or the standards, and those have not much to do with our true soul level goals, to whatever is important in our lives, soul level. So this energy is also a very powerful alchemical energy where we can just eliminate and close the door to all those expectations and desires that don't really belong in our lives, especially now, especially when the whole world, the whole outer reality is changing and collapsing on itself. Now, another very powerful energy which can ground us, which can help us navigate out from this very powerful, very oppressive confusion of that Venus and Neptune square, is the Sun on the 20th entering into the sign of Gemini, activating this part of the sky. Now, of course, Gemini is already heavily activated because Venus retrograde is there, the North Node is there, North Node being our karmic path, where we have to advance in this present moment. And of course, the ruling planet of Gemini, Mercury, also entered in this part of the sky. So Gemini is basically the superstar of the celestial period. So the sun moving in here brings a lot of light, clarity, and focus. And as soon as the sun enters in this part of the sky, it immediately starts forming a supremely harmonious celestial conversation with Saturn from fellow air sign Aquarius, where Saturn is actually the co-ruler of that sign, and that represents solidarity, humanitarianism. It represents communication and understanding, mutual support from others, from friends, from members of society, from members of our local community, from people on the internet, from online world. So our virtual friends basically are definitely included here, and this can be a really powerful and really beautiful energy because all of this is helping us stay grounded in truth, help us preserve our true inner standards, our dignity, our equity, our morality, because Saturn is retrograde, so its symbolism is inverse. We are our own judges, we are our own critics, and ultimately the spirit of duty is ours to hold, ours to use, where our duty right now is towards helping ourselves be as grounded as possible, because by doing so, we implicitly help other people, for example, our loved ones, our friends, the society that we belong to. So this is a really, really positive energy that is going to help us stay grounded in truth, in reality. This is where optimism or pessimism cannot have that much power over us, because the light of the sun is blessed by Saturn, the planet of physical reality manifestation, the lord of karma. So we are intuitively or rationally, because after all this is the sign of Gemini, in tune with reality. This is where our instinct, our mental spheres, the rationality of our minds are actually holding a sense of realism, and that is what we have to trust. And on the 22nd of the month, the moon joins the sun, forming the new moon in the sign of Gemini, and this new moon also joins Saturn. And this is a very, very positive energy because, as I said in my new moon videos, new moons always represent a new beginning, a new option, a new opportunity, something new entering our lives. And this new moon takes place in 2 degrees of Gemini, so wherever that degree falls into your personal chart, you can expect a powerful new beginning or something totally new, revolutionary, entering your life over the next 6 months. And this trine with Saturn, for some people, is an even more positive energy, because every, for example, project, effort, work, or sacrifice that you invested time and energy into in the past, and you haven't received anything, you haven't harvested the fruits of your labor, well, this can be a perfect karmic opportunity for this. This energy can make you go back and resume older projects, work left unfinished, and you can achieve massive success with all of these. But this can also represent a totally new beginning where it has nothing to do with the past, but rather where your social connections invite you and offer you opportunities to join them in projects, in work, in, for example, humanitarian causes, because that also has much to do with Saturn in Aquarius. And this is also the energy where good deeds, especially past good deeds, are going to be rewarded, and that reward can represent a fantastic new beginning for you, because that reward can be like honors, praises, publicity, especially if you work online, or it can be like resources or certain connections where a new beginning is catalyzed by all of this. But ultimately, on the world stage, the new moon in the sign of Gemini can represent practical new solutions, new ideas, a new approach to everything, especially this coronavirus situation, and how to fix the economy, powerful upgrades to our education systems, learning new things, new approaches. It is a wonderful energy for students and people, even teachers, for example, and everyone who wants to learn something new, because Mercury is also in this part of the sky. And basically, Mercury is the ruling planet of this new moon, because not only is it taking place in its home sign, also present here, so its energies are that much more guiding, and this is basically entering into a greater state of flow, where the state of flow is not that much about money, but rather intellect, the flow of thoughts, the circulation of information, and that always has a very positive end to it, because where many minds are united, where the ideas flow from many sources, well, that always births something wonderful, something unique, something new. And unique is actually the key word here, because Saturn in Aquarius represents our distinctiveness, our uniqueness, where even our flaws, our weaknesses, our imperfections are our greatest virtues, basically. So this isn't just about starting something new or opening a new chapter, but this is also you becoming a totally brand new person, because as I said, the sun is identity, and Gemini is a very adaptable, mutable dual sign, which can enable inner change and what you express onto others, because Gemini is communication, that much more. All of this is wonderful and this is actually good news, just that we must not expect this to be a very easy and comfortable energy. Because as I said earlier, Mercury towards the later part of the week is going to be meeting Venus in the sky, and that means that Mercury forms a square with Neptune as well, and that is also very uncomfortable energy. But ultimately, it is one of the most favorable expressions, because Venus is the heart, it is our feelings, everything that we love, our attractions, Mercury being our mind, communication, our mental processes. So this represents the mind meeting the heart in the already dual sign of Gemini, the twins basically, and they speak in tension with Neptune, our higher selves, our spirituality, our faith, our soul basically. So this is when a powerful alignment takes place, where of course Neptune is the dominant energy, but with Mercury and Venus joining forces, this is when we use the power of the square to actually stabilize ourselves, because it will become aware to us that we have to give the Caesar what belongs to the Caesar, as in the mental sphere, the rationality of the mind, but also we have to give the divine what belongs to the divine, and that is Neptune and Venus, the matters of the heart, where Venus retrograde already knows the difference between, for example, love and lust, attraction and true soul level love, the different expressions of love, where we might no longer want to question unconditional love, where we might no longer want to fight everything that we love unconditionally, because when we love unconditionally, when love has no reason when love has no logic, then the mind will try to challenge that, because that is the practicality of the mind. Why do you love it? What good does it do you? Does it benefit you? But divine love has no logic to it whatsoever. So whenever we become aware that we love something unconditionally, this is where we can surrender questioning it, just work with it, just accept it as a fact, just give up on trying to rationalize it. And this automatically sends us into a state of greater clarity where we can actually rationalize, analyze, and dig deep into all of the other expressions of love, which are actually susceptible to logic and rationality. And that is already a powerful celestial invitation which puts us into a position of power, because we can decide, if we just accept and surrender, that there are some things, some people, anything that we love just purely unconditionally. We stop wanting to change that, to eliminate that. Well, that is already a major clarity, because then our questions are directed to everything that we don't love as divinely. For example, our job, our partner, our colleagues, our friends, because all of that type of love is actually susceptible to, does it serve my highest good? Do I have any benefit from this? Is it rational and logical what I'm doing? Am I serving my highest good? Am I serving that person's highest good? Am I being honest to that person? So in conclusion, towards the later part of the week, that is going to be a moment when we are actually going to obtain clarity because of that Mercury there. But clarity and obtaining that clarity is not easy, and it is very, very hard work, basically, where we are our own psychologists, maybe we are our own clerics, and we just have to answer our own questions, and the answers that we receive ultimately guide us to self-knowledge, guide us to inner clarity, and knowing ourselves means knowing other people that much more. Another very relevant celestial conversation from my perspective is going to be Uranus from the sign of Taurus receiving a sextile from Mars in Pisces. Now this week this sextile is not going to be exact, only towards the very, very end of the week, but this is still a very powerful energy, because Uranus and Mars are the quickest energies out there, and whenever they meet in this kind of conversation, it represents quick and very instant manifestation. It can represent big ideas, epiphanies, moments of sudden realization, communication, unexpected manifestations of fate, surprises and shocks, which can change our situations in an instant. And especially in the sign of Pisces, Mars being there, well, there's so very many different ways that this energy can play out. For some people, it definitely represents meeting people from the distant past, unexpected, surprising, sudden reunions. For other people, it can represent sudden and unexpected emotional purge, where actually, out of nowhere, you just face a trauma, you just face something, a fear maybe, a phobia, something from the past, for no reason, out of nowhere, and that will represent a powerful moment of healing. And it doesn't really matter what triggered it. What actually matters is that it gives you the chance and the choice to eliminate it, to heal, to close it. And a totally different kind of representation is from a spiritual perspective, because Mars in Pisces is ultimately spiritual power. Yes, it is not very comfortable there, but it still is the power of our wills. And when speaking in harmony with Uranus, well, whatever we focus upon internally, spiritually, for example, our faith, whatever we pray for, whatever we ask for, whatever we fantasize about, our dreams, our imagination, can unexpectedly enter reality, shocking us and surprising us. But even though this is a harmonious conversation, we have to be very careful because fears are just as susceptible to manifestation as any other positive and joyful fantasy of ours. A totally different manifestation can be where we receive very powerful messages, guidance, visions in dreams, in altered state of consciousness, through meditations and any other spiritual practice, but mostly dreams. And Uranus is a very powerful energy which can trigger deja vus. And Pisces has also much to do with past lives because the information is stored within us. So, due to Uranus, we can access those past lives in an instant out of nowhere. It can open doors to different states of consciousness, different timelines, for example. It can also represent a very powerful, almost telepathic power, empathy. This I mean, hardcore empathy, where it's almost supernatural, where you can just pick up the feelings of others, where you concentrate on a specific person or recall memories with a specific person, and the next minute they phone you, message you, contact you, telling you that they have had a similar episode just there and then. And another manifestation of this energy, even though it might not have to do that much with love, yet still, this energy be actually fated where it connects you to someone who you have to meet in this life. Here I'm talking about, for example, soulmate type of connections, or when you have to deal with a specific person, for example, because it's part of your soul contract, then this is an energy which can enable all of that. And from a totally different type of perspective, this can also be a very powerful intuitive energy which can lead to luck because Uranus is in the sign of Taurus, and that can have to do with money, finances, material goods. So for some people, if they receive very powerful intuitive like guidance or impulses, even instinctual, when your gut feeling just screams at you to do something, a specific thing, or to contact a specific person, well, that can be a very powerful epiphany or guidance where if you do follow that course of action, it can lead to great fortune, it can lead to something totally surprising, unexpected, where even if it doesn't represent immediate material gains, it can still represent a powerful window of opportunity which you can use in the future, because Uranus is definitely the planet of the future. For example, this energy is perfect if you are guided to take very small and insignificant risks. For example, just buy a lottery ticket. That is a risk, but it is not a big sacrifice. So if you feel guided to do anything like that, well, maybe it can lead you to unexpected outcomes, because maybe you are going to win a sum on the lottery that you, for example, purchase something, but it can play out in a totally different way where it's not actually the lottery ticket that matters, but on your journey towards the shop or wherever you buy it, you meet a person who is going to start a conversation and give you very valuable information which you were missing from your life, and that can represent a fantastic new opportunity, for example. So this is almost like an invitation from a very fertile and constructive chaos to step out from your comfort zone and follow your intuitive guidance, because you never know where it leads you, and many times it can have very, very pleasant, very surprising, very positive outcomes. Now, on the 24th of the month, on Sunday, the last day of next week, the moon also joins Venus and Mercury in the sign of Gemini, and this can be a moment when we are really going to dig deep, 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 because this is the energy when our souls are here to help us find clarity. So this is a moment when we are not going to be alone, where our hearts and minds are not just battling that very powerful Neptunian vibe alone, but this is where our soul comes to help us, and that will be a moment of clarity. But at the same time, it can be a very mysterious, unusual, weird, awkward day for some people, because Pluto forms a quincunx with Mercury, and that can represent unexpected communication, but of the kind which seems almost surreal. And ultimately, it can represent good or bad news reaching you from your family, especially siblings. So, as a conclusion, I would just like to say that next week is going to feel really, really heavy, not just because of the retrogrades, but also that Venus and Neptune square. But even though we are going to struggle emotionally, especially, of course, some people will also struggle mentally, because this can also play out as the confusion, the chaos of the mind. But at the same time, this is where we actually receive divine guidance and help clear out this energy to find clarity. And the clarity that we are going to find next week and also the week after is going to be something very important long term for our futures. But besides all of this, the Sun's harmonious conversations with Jupiter and Pluto can also help us achieve progress, success, save our situations, make very important decisions regarding our finances, careers, and everything that has to do with our material lives. Now, last but not least, what I would like to still mention is we have to be very careful, because that Neptune Venus and also Neptune Mercury square and the trine Sun holds with Pluto. Now, this can also empower scammers, conners, dishonest people, thieves who can use lies, who can use deception, who can manipulate us. So, we need to be extra careful about all of these things next week, because the stars are. They empower everyone equally, and it is up to us how we use that energy. So sometimes the stars can actually empower dishonest people, whereas when we fight the confusion and all of that, those who are dishonest, those who are liars, those who make a living with fraud and conning people, well, they will definitely use that against us. Even if they don't even know the existence of this energy, they will feel very empowered and guided internally if that is their purpose in life, to gain through deceiving others. Well, we have to be extra careful now and use our rationality. And when an offer, a promise, every something is too good to be true, well, then chances are it is actually too good to be true, and we have to be very, very careful. But of course, if you fall victim to this, you don't need to despair, because at the same time, Jupiter and Pluto in the sign of Capricorn represent the hand of the law. Whoever makes a very dishonest living and, for example, hits the jackpot, finds the most appropriate victim, their joy and success of conning someone won't last for a very long time, because the stars, especially that Jupiter, also empowers law and justice, and earthly law and justice, because it is in the sign of Capricorn. And of course, later on, towards the end of the summer, Saturn is also going to be in his home sign of Capricorn, and that is definitely a moment when, either karmically or in human justice, it will be time to pay. Well, thank you so very much for listening. Thanks everyone for your support. Please take good care of yourselves. If these confusing Neptunian energies send you into depression, into anxiety, if you feel defeated, lost, or everything from the past just surfaces and overwhelms you, know that you can always reach out to someone. Saturn in Aquarius is definitely the energy of humanitarianism, so there is help out there. All you need to do is ask and communicate. Jupiter in the sign of Capricorn retrograde is the energy of generosity and giving, and ultimately Mars in the sign of Pisces is the power and strength of compassion, of altruism. So there is definitely help out there. All you need to do is reach out, so don't suffer in silence. Thank you once again. Wish everyone a blessed and safe week. Bye for now.